Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chaplain Carmody. Good to see everyone virtually, whether you're watching, whether you're a member of our wing watching live, whether you're a member of our wing watching at a later date. This will be recorded and posted, kept on our Facebook page, or whether you're a civilian that is checking this out. Thanks for joining us for this class on emotional intelligence. And just a quick background on me. I've been at this wing for about a year. And before that, previous Navy Reserve chaplain for 7 years. On the civilian side, I was a pastor for about 10 years, and I've been a licensed counselor in the state of South Carolina for the last year. So that's just a little bit about my experiences, but I'm excited for this class, and like a good Presbyterian minister, I've got 3 points, so I'm going to tell you what the 3 points are. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell it to you, and then I'm going to tell you what I told you. So our class will has 3 points. Why study emotional intelligence? What is emotional intelligence? And then lastly, we'll talk a little bit about emotional hijacking and flooding. This class is put on by the Chaplain Corps, and I'm obviously a Christian chaplain, so this will be taught from a Christian perspective. But regardless of your faith background, I think you'll find this class helpful, and the content here is quite good, regardless of your faith background. So, thanks for being here with us today. I hate that we can't do this in person, but we'll make do with Facebook Live for today. So, why study emotional intelligence? Why are we here today? This is kind of like the who cares question. And one thing I always like to talk about is when we talk about emotions, is there's a difference between being emotional and having emotions, because a lot of us will say, well, I'm not very emotional. I don't have a lot of emotions. And usually what that person means when they say that is they don't have like a huge expression of their emotion. You know, we all know people that when they get sad, they cry and they bawl and they wail. We all know people when they get angry, they might start throwing things and kicking, and but those are very just big expressions of our emotion. And that's one way that we do express emotion. But not all of us have expressions that are that obvious. So all of us have emotions, so that's not the question. You may not express your emotion as, in a grandiose way like a lot of people do, but it doesn't mean you don't have emotions. So that's the first thing we need to understand. So if you're a human being, you have emotions. And if you have emotions, you need to learn how to identify them and how to regulate them. So not all of us are emotional in the way we express our emotions, but we all have emotions, every single one of us. And so a big part of emotional intelligence is learning how to navigate our own emotions and learning how to navigate other people's emotions, because how we feel impacts our behavior, and how other people feel impacts their behavior. And so learning how to navigate our own emotions and how to navigate other people's emotions is going to be a big help to you personally, professionally, in your relationships. And this is another helpful aspect of emotional intelligence. So when we talk about this, we really are, a big key is, building emotional intelligence is building relational skills. So I want to talk for a minute about hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills are emphasized in the military, big time. Hard skills are technical skills. Can you take that computer apart and replace the motherboard? Can you pop the hood and, work on the engine? Those are kind of the technical skills. Can you manage this computer database? Those are all technical skills. A lot of us have been trained in understanding those technical skills. That's for most of us, that's probably why the Air Force hired us on. That's why we're in the Air National Guard, because of our hard skills, because of our technical expertise. But that's only part of the equation. So there's hard skills and then there's soft skills. Hard skills is the technical aspect. The soft skills, that's our relationship skills. And so what emotional intelligence does is you can take someone who's got a lot of technical expertise and their value to either your organization or their marriage or their family or their relationships, their technical skills are going to be magnified that much more if they've got soft skills, if they've got those relational abilities. So it's kind of a force multiplier. So you can see on the slide, your value to the group is your hard skills times your soft skills. And that makes sense, right? You think about someone who is maybe this expert in his or her field, and that's great. They have the technical expertise. But we all know people that are like that, but have no people skills. And if that, that person, maybe their success is only going to go so far because they're not good with people. And so maybe they're of value to their family or they're of value to their organization to a certain extent, but how much better would they be if they had relational skills, right? Same thing, we know people on the flip side, maybe that don't have kind of the technical expertise. Maybe they're not as sharp there, but they're great with people. And someone like that can be a huge asset to a family or to an organization, but it's because they have the soft skills, they have the relationship skills. And so, that's what we're talking about. As chaplains, we want to see you thrive. We want to see you succeed in not only the Air Force, but in your families and in your social, environment. So, technical skills, yes, we need those. But getting a better understanding of emotional intelligence is going to improve our relational skills, and that's gonna magnify your technical ability and make you that much more valuable to whatever you're involved with. So it's a big component of emotional intelligence. So that's kind of the why question. So what is emotional intelligence? What exactly are we talking about? And we need to understand that emotions are God-given. We have emotions from a Christian perspective. We have emotions because God has emotions. God feels sadness. God feels pain. God feels anger. God is compassionate. These are all emotions that God feels, and many more, obviously. And we have emotions because we're made in God's image. We're made in God's image, so the emotions that God has, those are the emotions that we have. And this is hard for us to understand that emotions aren't bad. Emotions aren't bad, and I think it can be part of the military culture is to just you got to take emotions out of the equation. Emotions are bad. We kind of value this kind of stoic approach to life, and what we want to say is emotions aren't bad. Emotions in and of themselves are God-given. Now, those emotions can push you in a positive direction, and those emotions can push you in a negative direction. So emotions are good. Emotions are God-given, but can they be twisted, and can they kind of manifest themselves in ways that are harmful and destructive? Absolutely. So getting a better handle on our emotions helps us harness our emotions in a good direction, and helps us kind of steer clear from being emotionally driven in a negative direction. So, I hope as we're going along, these points, you can kind of see, this is really important. This is an important topic. There's a lot of debate in the psychological community and emotional intelligence circles. What are the basic emotions? Some say there's 4, some say there's 6, maybe there's 9, maybe there's 20. Who knows? But here's just a helpful graphic. So as we think about our emotions, one of the big keys is being able to label what we're feeling and being able to label what other people are feeling. So here's a basic 6 types of emotions: happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, and surprise. This is a list. There's lots of other lists out there, but these are an example of kind of the 6 core emotions. And underneath each core emotions, there can be subsets and kind of nuances. So when you say fear, that can mean any number of things. When you say sadness, there can be different levels of sadness, different types of sadness, but kind of the core emotions. This is a pretty good list: happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, surprise. At the core, kind of classical emotional intelligence is self-awareness. You're aware of your own emotions, and then other awareness. You're aware of other people's emotions. And if you read any book on, and I've got some references at the end of this slide deck, that's kind of emotional intelligence, kind of the classical version of it. So you're aware of your own emotions, you're aware of other people's emotions, and as you are navigating space with other people, as you respond to them, as you interact, having a working knowledge of your own emotions, how you're feeling, and being aware of how they're feeling can really be helpful. And we're going to go through some examples here in a minute of this. There's a man by the name of Ken Sande who runs Peacemakers Ministries, and what he has done is he has kind of taken the concepts of emotional intelligence and added another element. So emotional intelligence is other aware and self-aware. What Sande has done is added this God-aware element. So you're self-aware, you're aware of your own emotions, you're other aware, you're aware of other people's emotions. The third element he has added is God-aware. You're aware of God. What is God leading you to do? What's God's perspective in this? What are truths from God that we can apply in this particular situation? So what he's saying is, you can be aware all day long, but where's your moral compass? What are your values? And as Christians, we would say, well, we get our values from the Lord. We get our values from the scriptures, from God and his character. If you're not a believer, well, you get your values from somewhere, and so, your God, if you're a Christian, or your values play a huge role in this equation. And you have to acknowledge that. You have to, that plays into this whole emotional intelligence equation. So Sande has actually kind of called this relational wisdom. And I've got a link to his materials at the end of this slide deck. But those are the kind of the three main components: God-aware, self-aware, and other-aware. So what I want to do now is I want to go through three examples that I think may help us kind of put some flesh on some of these ideas. So again, what is emotional intelligence? Let's talk about other awareness. Other aware. So if you can see the slide here, if you are a sports fan, you know who this is. This is Urban Meyer. And so again, we're going to talk about the other awareness aspect of emotional intelligence. This is Urban Meyer, incredibly successful college coach, multiple national titles. And this past year, he was hired on by the Jacksonville Jaguars to be their head coach. And he had, before the season began, and even the first part of the season, was already kind of under some fire for some personnel decisions he had made. And so, and Jacksonville was not having a good year. I think for a long time they were winless. But partway through the season, the Jaguars played the Bengals, and the game was at Cincinnati, and they lost. And Meyer, rather than travel back with the team in Jacksonville, stayed behind in Ohio. He coached at Ohio State, so that's where his home is. And so he stayed behind, didn't fly back with the team, stayed behind to spend time with family. And there was video that surfaced later of Meyer at a bar, which apparently he owns a bar in Ohio where he was. Video surfaces later of him in a bar dancing, provocatively with a woman that wasn't his wife. So this made all kinds of headlines. October, November, somewhere in that time frame. And so this happened, and then he addresses the media, a couple days after this. So this is what I want to talk about with other awareness. He addresses the media, and it's a press conference, and he gets up there and he says, he addresses this incident, and his comments, I timed it, lasted about 37 seconds. And the words he used to describe what happened, he said this was stupid, and I was a distraction. This was stupid, and I was a distraction. Okay, that was his public comments. We don't know what happened in private. We're using this as an example. Okay, so Urban Meyer did not fly back with the team, and essentially, on some level, cheated on his wife. at least what we saw in the video was that was a thing, right? So, Urban Meyer, what would be how can we think about the other awareness at this point? So, based on what Urban Meyer has done, who has he affected? Well, he's affected his family, for sure. He's affected his players. He's affected his fans. You've got the sports media. You've got, so there are, thousands of people that have been affected by his actions. And if you're in a situation like that, a question you need to be asking is, how are these people feeling based on what I've done? How are these people feeling based on what I've done? And how can I respond in a way that recognizes their feelings? So when Urban Meyer says this was stupid and I was a distraction, in my opinion, that's not taking into account the hurt that these other people are feeling. He's the leader of the team. He is supposed to set forth a good moral example. And, a distraction would be if Urban Meyer showed up late to a meeting. Distraction is, a Twitter post that maybe has a poor word choice. That's a distraction. What he did was way above a distraction. And so, so for him to appropriately address the situation, he needs to be aware of other people's feelings. They're hurt. They're angry. They want him fired probably. And, we all know what happened. He eventually was fired many weeks later. But how you respond in a situation like that, you need to have other awareness. In my opinion, Urban Meyer did not have good other awareness. He didn't appreciate the level of hurt and pain he had caused other people. And by saying it was stupid and a distraction, his comments didn't reach the level of emotion that was present. So you can see how not being aware of other people's emotions really can wreck a relationship, or it could be a powerful step to repairing it. That's other awareness. Self-awareness. If you can't see this picture, this is a computer that's on fire. This is a little bit of a Chaplain Carmody testimonial that happened yesterday. We started it's a 4-day driller this month, and we got to the office, and yesterday, Thursday, went in, ready to fire up my computer and get to work, and nothing. Won't turn on. And if you're in the military, we've all had that experience, right? And not just the military, but so immediately this happens. And okay, what's the temptation with something like this? To get frustrated, to get annoyed. And before you know it, you start the day off like that, and sometimes you can't recover, and you're irritable, you're snippy with people, you're not focused, you're just in a bad mood. So one way to deal with that when something like that has happened is to kind of take a moment and do some self-awareness. What am I feeling right now? Well, I'm kind of annoyed because my computer won't turn on. When you do that, you take this feeling of being annoyed that can potentially kind of take over your whole body and take over your whole, everything about you. And you say, okay, I'm annoyed. I'm going to pull this out right here. I'm annoyed. But I'm not just annoyed at everything. I'm annoyed at this computer. And when you do that, when you name your emotion, you pull it out and you say, yeah, I'm annoyed. But I'm not just annoyed at everything. I'm not annoyed at my coworkers. I'm not annoyed at the room temperature. It's just this one little thing, or maybe this one big thing. What you're doing is you're taking the sting out of that emotion. Suddenly, it's not in full control of you anymore because you've named it and you've kind of put it out there, and that will help you. That will help you. And if you're annoyed or whatever it is, you can take it the next step. Okay, I'm annoyed. All right, if I'm annoyed, I probably need to be extra careful with how I talk today. I probably need to think before I respond because I'm kind of annoyed based on this computer. Do you see how that could be helpful? How many of us have had days where we get annoyed or we have some kind of emotion and it really it ruins our day? And people around us are affected, we're affected. Emotional intelligence can help us with that by taking that pause. All right, what am I feeling right now? And how's that going to affect the way I relate to other people? And to take the time to do that can be super helpful. Again, professionally, personally, no matter where you are, this can be really helpful. let's talk about God awareness. And I've just got a picture here of a husband and wife. Let's say they are fighting, and so we could almost fill in the blank with any fight, but we'll just say they've gotten into an argument, and maybe the wife has done or said something hurtful to her husband. And so she's done or said something hurtful to the husband, and so the question is, how is the husband going to respond? So say she's done or said something hurtful to her husband, and she says, "I'm sorry. Will you forgive me?" Pretty typical, something you could see happening. So the question is, what's the husband going to do? And he can be aware of his own feelings. He can be aware of his wife's feelings. But the question is he going to forgive her? What does that look like? She's asked for it. What's next? Well, this is where you have to go to, what are your beliefs about forgiveness? And as Christians, we have a pretty clear belief about forgiveness. And we go to Ephesians 4, and what does Ephesians 4 say? We are to forgive as God has forgiven us. So the Christian view of forgiveness is Jesus Christ died on the cross to forgive us of our sins. Everything we've ever done, said, or thought gets completely forgiven based on what Christ has done. If we repent of our sins, if we turn from our sins, believe in Christ, we are forgiven, no questions asked. It's a free gift. And that same sin that you committed today and you commit tomorrow and you commit the next day, if Christ's blood covers you, you're forgiven. So it's in that same spirit and that same strength. As believers, we are called to forgive other people. So the husband is here. His wife has done or said something really hurtful, and she says, "Will you forgive me?" If the husband is God aware, how's he going to respond? He's going to say, "Honey, I forgive you." If he's not God aware, there may be every bit of him that wants to say, "No, I don't forgive you. I'm angry at you. How dare you?" I mean, you can see how this could go, right? And in most marriages, these fights that we get in, these are perpetual. These same patterns will happen over and over again. So in a situation like this, this probably isn't the first time she's had to ask for forgiveness for these things. So the husband could easily say, "Well, I just forgave you for that last week. No, I'm not forgiving you again. It's been 2 months. This has happened too many times. I'm out." You see where that could go. This is when you need to be God aware. What will God have you do here? And God says forgive. Now again, if you're not a Christian, that is not maybe the best example for you. But your values, whether they're from God or whether they're from wherever, are always playing into things. So, before you react to something in an emotional way, ask that question. How is God leading me? And again, if you're not a God follower, what would my values dictate? So take the time to do that. You see how that could be really helpful in your relationships. Again, this is husband and wife, but this could apply to any relational dynamic. And that's it. Those are the three components: God aware, self-aware, and other aware. And these things are all working together in all of our relationships all the time. And emotionally intelligent people are aware of all those three dynamics. And emotionally intelligent people that are aware of all those three, they're going to have better relationships. And again, back to our previous slide, they're going to have those soft skills that are going to magnify their hard skills. And if you've got hard skills and soft skills, watch out. The sky is the limit for you. That's what emotional intelligence would say. So that's what is emotional intelligence. We want to close with this last section on emotional hijacking. And this is called a couple different things. Daniel Goleman and Ken Sande call this amygdala hijacking. The Gottmans, they do marriage. The Gottman Institute is a marriage counseling institute, and where I was trained, and they call this flooding, but it's the same thing. Here's how Ken Sande defines it. Emotional hijacking is sudden, strong emotions that trigger an impulsive reaction that is soon regretted. So three components: strong emotional reaction, strong emotions, impulsive reaction, and soon regretted. Have we all been in a situation where this has happened to us? Probably so. Emotions get the better of us. Our kid does something, we get really angry and we snap, right? We've all done something like that. And we have a strong emotion, we react in a certain way. We may say something like, "You're grounded forever." Then you look back, 2 minutes later, you're like, "Oh, why did I say that?" Forever is a long time. That's kind of a bland example, but we can all see that happening. It's a strong emotion, it gets the better of us. We react impulsively and we soon regret it. So our minds, this is a very non-technical way of looking at this. Our minds kind of have two parts. We have a rational mind and we have an emotional mind. So a rational mind is very logical, very problem-solving, looks at the facts, and that's the rational mind. Then we have our emotional mind. And our emotional mind takes those emotions into account and reacts in an emotional way. And it's not like we got a rational mind good, emotional mind bad, or vice versa. What we want is a wise mind. We want that sweet spot where our rational mind and our emotional mind intersect. That's what makes you wise. Emotions can be good. Seeing someone in pain and having compassion on them is good. That can drive you to action, to be generous to them. So you want that emotional mind, but you want the rational mind too. You don't want to feel bad for that person and write them a check for $10,000. That may not be that your emotions may want you to do that, but your rational mind's like, hey, hold on. So you want that sweet spot where your emotions and your emotional mind and your rational mind are working together. And that's what that graphic illustrates. Here's a problem with that. And this is all about brain chemistry. When something happens, there's a race. There's a race. So here's Usain Bolt, who's retired now. So if you're younger, you may not even know who that is, but he was a fast guy at one point. Probably still pretty fast. Here's Usain Bolt, and here's his competition. He is killing them right now in this race. Well, in our brains, our emotional brain works faster than our rational brain. So if something happens to you, again, this would be very true of PTSD. So this is understanding hijacking really helps us understand PTSD. And so your emotional brain is going to fire faster than your rational brain. So again, back to the example with your son or daughter has done something, and it really upsets you. You're going to react emotionally. Your emotional brain is going to win that race every time. So you're going to react emotionally before you can think about it rationally. So your emotional brain is operating faster. You can see how that would lead to problems. That's how emotional hijacking happens. And hijacking is an apt term because hijacking says we're going this way. You're hijacked. Oh, now we're going this way. That's what our emotions can do. Our emotions can hijack us and make us do things that we would regret later. So that's important to know, that your emotions can easily get ahead of your rationality. And we're going to talk about some strategies to help your rational brain catch up, because that's really what you want. You want your emotions and your rational brain and your emotional brain playing a part in how you respond. What are some signs that this is happening to you? What are some signs that you're being emotionally hijacked? Well, sometimes you raise your voice. Sometimes you start to shake, either hands or your feet, or you might have the knee tap. Oftentimes there's an increased heart rate. With that can come sweating. Sometimes you get defensive. So if we find ourselves getting defensive and really trying to defend what we've done in a pretty powerful way, sometimes that can be a sign we're being emotionally hijacked. Some people get quiet. So some people that are hijacked get really kind of gregarious, and some people get kind of shut down. So it's not the same for everybody. Emotionally hijacked people have trouble thinking rationally. So if you're in a situation and you find your mind's going a mile a minute and you kind of just feel like you're kind of jumbled up here, that might be a sign you're emotionally hijacked. Emotionally hijacked people also have trouble listening. So if you've had a big blow up fight with somebody, you might find, a couple of days later, you're gonna have trouble kind of remembering what happened, or like remembering what was said, or remembering kind of the details of what went on, or what the other person said. Well, that's because you have trouble listening. That's a sign that you're emotionally hijacked. So we need to be aware of this. You need to know when you're being hijacked and be able to take a step back, because people that are emotionally hijacked, there's very little good that can come from that. Very little good. It's a danger. If you're in an emotionally hijacked state, that's a dangerous place to be. You need to be aware of that. So what happens if you find yourself in this situation where your emotions are getting the better of you? One, you need to recognize it. Recognize what's going on. Look for these signs. Have this kind of self-awareness. I am raising my voice right now. I am getting defensive. I'm having trouble thinking right now. You're probably hijacked. Recognize it. Second thing you do is shut up. That's good advice. If you're hijacked, 9 times out of 10, anything you say is not going to be helpful, and it is actually going to probably make the situation worse. So be quiet. Always good advice if you're hijacked. Call timeout. Calling a timeout is saying, hey, I'm feeling a little emotional right now. Whatever's going on, I need to take a step back, and maybe I'll circle back to whatever it is in 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, a day, whatever it is. Give yourself a chance to cool down. If you're in an emotionally hijacked state, that's not a time to be making decisions. It's not a time to be solving problems in your marriage or your parenting. It's a time to take a break, catch your breath. Take a walk. Removing yourself from the situation, getting some fresh air, giving yourself a chance to kind of regroup. I can't tell you how helpful taking a walk is. Some people listen to music. Some people find that helpful. Prayer can be a great resource. Prayer does so much. If you're feeling emotions, read the Psalms. All kinds of emotions in the Psalms. That is a good place to kind of go to kind of vent, to kind of ground yourself in the Psalms. Deep breathing is a great thing you can do. Again, what are some of the symptoms of hijacking? Increased heart rate. Your heart starts pumping and you start kind of getting in that kind of fight or flight stage. Breathing is something you can control. So as you slow your breathing down, that's going to bring your heart rate down. That's going to calm your body down. And I'll just say, I'm fairly new in the counseling space, but it seems like, any counselor you talk to will just say, whatever's going on, you just need to do some deep breathing. And for a long time, I was like kind of put off by that. Like deep breathing, that's your solution for everything. But I've come around to see that really is helpful. You can't control your heart rate. Sometimes you can't control your emotions. You can control your breathing, and that will slow everything down and put you in a better space. So that's really important. This little picture here, on a base level, the stronger the emotions are, the lower our reasoning is. Again, that's this race. Our emotions are going to win every time. So by learning how to be quiet, call time out, go for a walk, pray, listen to music, deep breathing, what are we doing? We're giving our rational brain a chance to catch up. So the emotions aren't running the show. Now, the emotions need to have their day, have their say. We don't want to downplay that. But what do we want? We want the wise mind. The wise mind who has their emotions and their rational part both functioning together. That's what we want. So by recognizing you're being hijacked and taking some of these steps, that gives your rational brain a chance to catch up and put you in a much better place to navigate whatever situation you're in. So this is self-aware. I'm being hijacked. Well, what's your other aware? What do you do if someone else is being hijacked? And you have a responsibility here. So what you can do is you can remember they are not thinking rationally. I'm going to say that again. Someone who's emotionally hijacked is not thinking rationally. So if you're having a blowout fight with your spouse and you think they're wrong and they're furious at you, it is not the time for you to tell them the 4.5 things that they did wrong that day, or the 6 things they needed to fix the problem. They are not thinking rationally. They're not going to listen to a single word you say. So you need to remember that. If you've got, if you've got a junior airman in your office and they've just screwed something up in a pretty royal way, and they may be feeling really scared, they may be, oh man, I'm going to really get it today. If that's what they're feeling, they're not thinking rationally. They're not going to hear words you say. So there's a time to address what's going on with that junior airman. You need to think about, is now the time? Or do I need to maybe broach that conversation and say, okay, I'd like to see my office tomorrow morning, let's talk about this some more. Give them a chance to cool down. They'll be in a much better place to hear what you have to say. Empathize with them. Understand what's happening. They're being hijacked. You have an opportunity to remain calm. The calmer you are, that's going to help them kind of bring things down. That's going to help them kind of de-escalate. That's important. Oftentimes, one person who's emotionally hijacked can easily lead to the other person becoming hijacked. And if both people are hijacked, that is a train wreck in the making. So if you see someone being hijacked, one thing you can do is stay calm, not only for them, but for you, to keep yourself in a good place, to make sure you don't get hijacked and make the situation worse. Ideally, the person who's hijacked would have the wherewithal to say, hey, let's take a time out. Whatever we're talking about right now, let's circle back on this another time. It's unlikely that they'll be able to do that well. So, if you are in a conversation with someone or in a situation where someone else is hijacked, you can take the initiative and say, hey, I can see you're really upset and I really want to continue this conversation. Let's maybe take a 15-minute walk and we'll come back and talk about this. That'll put them in so much of a better place to talk about these things in a helpful way. So sometimes just because someone else is having a hijack moment, you can play a role in that. If you care about that person, if you care about the goals y'all are mutually trying to get to, if you care about the mission, you'll have some ownership there, and you'll take that step to help remain calm yourself and bring them back down. That's emotional hijacking. That's a small piece of emotional intelligence, but it is it can affect you and your relationships in an extremely negative way. Careers are on the line when people are hijacked. Marriages are on the line. Relationships are on the line when you're hijacked or when someone else is hijacked. So it's really important to see that happening. We need to wrap up, but we have, here's our 3 points. Here's what we've covered. We have talked about why study emotional intelligence. Because we're emotional people. And our emotions can push us in a good direction or not so good direction. We need to be aware of our emotions and be able to understand them and manage them. We also need to be aware of other people's emotions. And if we can do that, that's going to make us that much more of a good husband or a good wife or a good mom or dad or a good supervisor or a good junior officer, whatever the case is. We talked about what is emotional intelligence. It's the self-aware, it's the other-aware, and it's the God-aware. And lastly, we've talked about emotional hijacking and flooding, which is a really key point here and can really, managing hijacking can really save you out of some pretty horrible situations, which is really important. Lastly, here are some sources. So this is Ken Sandy's website, Relational Wisdom 360. A lot of resources there. They have some online trainings. They've got some group studies you can do. Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. He is, probably the most well-known kind of emotional intelligence guru. I'm in Squadron Officer School right now, and we've had to look at some materials that he has put out. And then lastly, the Government Institute has some good stuff on flooding, which is the same thing as hijacking. So we're going to wrap there. Thanks for hanging in there with us. And again, I hope, wish we could have done this in person. But the nice thing is, this will be out there on the interwebs to look at for years to come. But anyways, any other questions about this, or if you want to talk shop, Chapman Carmody, we love to do that. Come by our office. We'd love to talk to you more about these things. And have a blessed day, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.